different so we can't cover every scenario because every platform kind of treats things a little bit differently, but we'll cover most of the hero points about changing across to GA4. Google do provide us a demo site. It is an e-commerce site, and it is genuinely one of their sites. So we'll hop into a live session, and I can talk you through some of the ways to look at data in GA4. And then we'll allow some time for some questions at the end. Now, today being Taylor Swift Ticket Day, I've got a team of people that are trying to get tickets. So if we hear some loud shouts of joy, that's probably people getting some tickets. So yeah, just I'll if it gets a little bit rowdy, I'll stick my earphones in and my microphone in. All right. So why is Google making the change? So you may be aware that in next year, Google is moving to a cookieless world. So what that means is every time that we interact with a website, there's a small piece of data that is downloaded to our local computers, just to help us when we're going back to websites for loading sites. But also there's a little bit of data that is captured about our interaction with that site and some of our own history. So Google, with iOS 14 that was released maybe a year ago, that was a kind of a game changer in terms of protecting our privacy, and Google are following suit. And so in the new year, they haven't told us what time, they are making a major change to Google Chrome. And why this is important is, particularly for Australians, is that I think almost 8 out of 10 Australians use Google Chrome as their browser. And so no longer will they be capturing data through cookies. There's going to be another more secure way that they're going to do it to protect us as a user. So to help them go to that, GA4 has been created with privacy front of mind. So it's protecting us as users. It's protecting our users of our websites as well. So I know a couple of questions that have already come through prior to this session were very much about that privacy side of things. The other thing that's been happening in the background, this has been going on for a number of years, is that Google have been requested to be able to make certain activities that are specific to our own websites trackable. And so rather than Google using just time as a measurement, they've gone to this event-based data modeling to help us to track information. And we'll go into how that looks a little bit later. But the main reason is they're making the change because they're moving to this the cookieless world. Okay, so what is the real difference between Universal Analytics and GA4? There is a new interface for sure, and that makes it a little bit easier to see. They've improved the way that it looks and how we use it. The other major change from Google's point of view is that you used to have to set up a separate stream if you had both an app and a website. You can now combine those two streams, so you're viewing that data in that one place. Almost all the reports that we used to love and were familiar with in UA is available in Google Analytics 4. It takes a little while to find where some of them all are, and there's some filters that we've got to apply to be able to get that data. The other thing is that Google is using their machine learning to do two things. One is we can ask questions when we're inside of GA4 to report on some basic data. So we could type in and say, show me how many users I've had from Melbourne in the month of May, and it will give us that number. So it's really quite clever when it comes down to that. If it can't answer the question, it will give you a link to the most likely report that you can drill down on that data. And the other thing, as it captures more data about how people are using our websites, it can give us predictive insights. Now, when I go to Kingthing's website, I can see some of those insights starting to come through. At the moment, I don't think they're particularly valuable, but down the track, once it's understood that data, it will be able to predict things. For instance, we've set up an event in our GA4 to say, well, tell us how many people are going to our graphic design page, because we've been doing some marketing about our graphic design services. And there's a prediction to say that we predict that in the next month, you will have 112 visitors to your site. The reality is we only had probably 10 in that period. They haven't quite got it now, but down the track, as more users and more users usage are being tracked, that data should become more valuable. I mentioned before how mostly universal analytics was time-based. So we'd be used to seeing information that would be things like how much time people spend on a page or your site. There used to be measurements of the bounce rate, which was based on how much time people were spending on the site and when they interact with your site. Most of that data is still available, but what they're basing it on is on events. So things that are specific that you are interested in for your website, which is quite a powerful change. And for a number of years, Google has been encouraging us to have super fast websites. So time on a website is becoming less relevant. And a good example is if you have a restaurant and you've got a strong local following, the goal of your website probably is to get people to the booking page or to see the menu. So a driver for people going back to a familiar restaurant is, have they changed the menu? Is my favorite meal available? So we've got a couple of restaurant sites where people only spend probably 3 or 4 seconds on the homepage before they tap book now or they tap to check the menu. So in that instance, time on a page is completely irrelevant. And with Google Analytics and that tracking, it would have said that that's a bad result. But in fact, we've served up content exactly what is needed by those websites. So the other thing is there are some standard events that come across when you've migrated your site, but you can set up your own metrics that are important. Now, the disclaimer is here that it is a little bit difficult to set those events up, but we will cover what that looks like. Google are encouraging us all to become familiar with the Google Tag Manager. Some of you might already use that. Once the tag is set up, it can work dynamically for us. But yeah, I'll just put that little disclaimer there. Some of the events might be a little bit difficult to set up until you're familiar with the platform. So the nice thing is, if you had goals already set up in your universal analytics, or you had audiences set up, then they will come across to GA4 automatically. And as I said, there's a different user interface, which is a little bit more flexible to use. All right. So there are 2 main terms that have been introduced to GA4, and you've already heard me talk about it, is events. So rather than time, Google are wanting us to focus on an event. And an event is anything that is specific to our business that we want to measure. So that might be when somebody loads a specific page, clicks on a particular link, makes a purchase, completes a newsletter sign-up form, or just your general inquiry form. We can set up events, so then we can see that data at the click of a button. There are 4 different types of events that Google is talking to us about, but the main ones to get familiar with are standard events. They're the ones that come across with your migration, and custom events, which we will talk about a little bit later. The other term is conversion. So if some of you are familiar with Google Ads or meta advertising, there's to measure results, they talk about conversion. So it's similar to here. So once you have got an event, let's say it is, you want to track events that people are accessing a particular product or service or tour or attraction that you're offering. You can then mark that as a conversion, and you can put a dollar value behind that. Or you can also have that front and center as the success of whatever transaction has occurred on your site. So they're the two main basic new pieces of content that we'll talk about today. There's lots of others, but we'll keep it at a fairly low level today. All right, so a lot of you would have got some warnings from Google, and they've started a while back now, and some of those warnings probably a little bit scary, but the good thing is, if you haven't manually changed over to GA4, Google has partly done that for you. They have connected a new GA4 property to your Universal Analytics property, and data would have started to flow, which is fantastic. Problem is, you're probably seeing these horrible little countdowns. So this kind of looks more like it belongs on a James Bond movie or a Mission Impossible movie. So I know we've had some clients be frightened by this a little bit. It's like, what's going to happen once, I get down to 30 seconds to go. But it really is just to try and stimulate some action. So being the last day of the year, and the changeover happens tomorrow, there are some steps that you may need to go to that are really quite simple to stop this kind of notification happening. So you might have thought, well, I have done everything that I'm supposed to do, but I'm still getting a warning like this one down the bottom. Again, there's nothing to be concerned about. Everything's going to be okay. And there's just a few simple steps just to keep Google happy on this migration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to step through some of the basic things that we need to do to make sure that we're ready for tomorrow and the new world. So the first thing is that you can go to your existing Google Analytics account. So that's that UA account, and that's defined by 8 unique numbers. And then once you've gone there, you can click in the bottom left-hand corner on this little admin cog. That will take you to your Universal Analytics property, and you should see 3 columns. That's going to tell us that you're in the right place. Here's that UA with the 8 numbers. And what we want to do is we want to click on this GA4 Setup Assistant. So then this is going to take us to another screen that says, yep, you're connected. But there's just a couple of little steps that we need to do. So we know from this example that it's connected and it is collating data, but we're still getting those horrible messages. Once we've clicked on going to our property, we go to this Setup Assistant. And so in this screenshot, we can see that there's 0 of 7 tasks completed. So you can actually nominate that you've done all these things without having to do things, and that is actually going to make Google happy. But there are a few steps. So this first one here collects website and app data. We can see in this instance that data is flowing. And what we want to do is, if we see that data flowing, we can mark that as complete. Once we click this little arrow here, we can mark it as complete. And then we get the green light. The only tricky one is this next one, turn on Google Signals. So what we are recommending is that we just mark this as complete without doing anything. So we can read here, access aggregated data from people with Google accounts who allow ads personalization. So if you are a heavy Google ad advertiser, then you might consider turning on these signals. However, when you do click on the arrow here and you go to manage Google Signals, there's a lot of reading you've got to do. You've got to accept lots of terms and conditions. You on your own website have got to make sure that your terms and conditions and your privacy policies are up to date and visible. and then you've got to copy a piece of content that is part of an announcement when you open your website and you have your cookies disclaimer that you're using Google's guidelines to say what you are actually collecting. So for most of our clients, what we've been encouraging them to do, because we know that in 6 or 7 months' time, Google's going to be changing the parameters again. So what we've been recommending is to mark that as complete, and then that will still keep Google happy. So the next thing to do is we want to go to, on this left-hand side, this data streams, and we want to click on this little option here, because what we want to do is we go to this thing called enhanced measurement. I know this is probably sounding a little bit gobbledygook, but if you can follow this step by step, I promise you it will make sense. So when Google has migrated some of the settings and some of the reports across from UA to GA4, we have the opportunity of nominating the kind of data that we want to track automatically as events. So what we want to do is we want to click on that cog, and then we want to turn on all of these switches. So it's just a case of clicking these toggles and then saving it. And all this is doing, and it'll make more sense later, is that we're turning on all of the available automated events that Google are recommending. So then we can go back to our setup. There'll be a setup button, and it'll take us back to these the setup assistant. So we've got here that we've marked as complete, the first 2 steps. Then just go through all of these sequentially, and you can mark them as complete. Again, if you are a Google Ads advertiser, then rather than just marking it as complete, you click the button to link your account. And again, it's just a couple of clicks and you're done. And in this first instance, I would suggest just marking all of these as complete. And so then that will stop some of those nasty messages that you're getting today. As a bit of a protection as well, what we want to do is add the new GA4 ID to our website. So if you had already manually done this, Google would have asked you to do this already. And there's a bit of another wizard. So you can put your own URL into their wizard tool, and it will tell you the instructions that you need to do. So like 40% of us have WordPress websites. So they encourage you to either use a plugin or it would give you the instructions on how to do it. Same with Squarespace and Doodah and Wix and Weebly. All of those, they would give you the instructions, which is essentially just copying a piece of ID. So that ID is available through data streams, and then just click on our stream here. This is Google's demo site that I've used here. And then this here is your measurement ID. So you can click the little button here. So for Squarespace, Weebly, Wix, and a lot of those content management systems, you just have to copy that and follow the instructions on where to place that. And you can stick that right next to the universal code as well. You may need, if you've got a coded site, you may need to pass that on to your developer. All right, so yes, I do apologize that we did race through that. At the end of this session, I'll have some links on a slide to some Google demonstrations. Some of those demonstrations go for a long time, but the part that you need to watch is very, very short. And there's a series of videos, depending on what stage you are at your setup, that you can hop in to understand what you need to do to finalize that, that setup. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to cross our fingers that this and hop into a GA4 site. And what we're going to do is just look at some of those key changes and key metrics. and get a better understanding of what's going on. So I'll just let this load. So the nice thing with this website is that there is a lot of data that is already available. This site has been live and collecting data since I think 2021. So yeah, there's lots of information here. All right, so when we go to our new GA4 property, this is what we're greeted with. So one of the main changes that we see, they're using these card styles. And whilst it's not terribly exciting to look at in its current format, where you see a link, you can go into a deeper report. And so this homepage is just those hero elements that Google have deemed important for us to see. So this one is just talking about how many users there has been in the last 7 days, an account of all the events that have been triggered and the conversions, and how many have been new users. And so the new users is just in this time period. This little card here is the data that's available for real time. So 98 people have been on the website real time in the last 30 minutes. So whenever you see these little links, you can click on these and you can drill down into a deeper view to get an understanding. So right off the bat, I will say there is a lot of flexibility with the way that we view these data. So don't get too hung up on Google wanting us to create events, because for a lot of us, what we've seen with a lot of our clients is that they just need to see some basic data. And so there's nothing crazy that people are wanting to see. And in most cases, you can see once you understand how to drill down a little bit into these reports, that information is readily available. So I think the biggest tip that I'll give you today is hop in here, click on things, think about some of the data that is important to you, and then just go and see where you can find it, rather than trying to dip in and try and create these events or custom events. So the other thing that's a little bit different is that, and one of the things I really like about this is there's this little search bar, and what you can do is you can ask questions. So let's say, how many users from New York today? So it's guessing, predicting what I'm looking for. And so it's going to give us a report that's based on today. So over here, there's nobody from today. So that was a bad example. But what I can do is I can say in May. And so then it gives us the result here straight away in a dynamic form. And you can see that the date range is here. So another example, this is an e-commerce site. So a lot of things about this site is transactional. Let's go and say revenue for today. So if it can't work it out and return it straight away, it's going to suggest a report. There's been none for today, so we can change that for May. So it's telling us how much revenue they made in the month of May. So for a lot of instances, you can get your data at just a few taps of your keyboard. So it's really quite dynamic. And as I say, if it doesn't come up with anything here, it will suggest some reports to go to, and we can click through to those specific reports. That's quite a clever thing. Really do like that. So there's in almost every view, you will see this little insights as well. So if I click on that now, we can drill down, and here are some standard questions that people are asking all the time. So if we can't think of the way to frame that question, we can look at what are the standard ones. So here we go. What are the top cities by users? And it's drilling straight down into that straight away. really quite dynamic about how we can draw data just at the click of a few buttons. So another one is that they've minimized the menu options. And so there's one that is called reports. And I would suggest this is where you would spend most of your time. And you would be familiar with some of these terms that were already in Universal Analytics. So let's go, well, something that's easier to understand is engagement. So what we'll go is we'll go to the overview of engagement, and we'll just have a click around just to see what we can achieve here. So we won't go into any detail, but we'll just show you how you can use it. So again, you're seeing some of the popular pages. We're looking at activity over time. Let's find something that we can drill down into. Well, let's go to real time. So again, I'm looking for any kind of links to get to a deeper data. So we'll click on that. So it's giving us a snapshot of who's online right at the minute and who's been in the last 30 minutes. So for instance, if you are doing a big campaign, whether that's through Google Ads or through Meta, and you've got a launch date, it might be nice to see if you're getting traffic coming through that way. Another thing is that one of the popular reports is the popular pages. So that's still available. So we can, if we scroll down here, we can see which of the popular pages. If we want to drill down some more, we can click through to here as well. Another popular report from UA was landing pages. So a landing page determined is, what is the entry point to our website? What are the page that people are first landing on? And why that's important to understand is that, in the olden days, we were trying to get people to our homepage. But these days, what we want to do is get people quicker to the page that they need to go on. And that's where a good SEO strategy comes into play. So in this report, what we can see is Google has done a terrible job. This is most likely their homepage, and they haven't nominated the page name here. But here it's telling us which are the pages that have been accessed as an entry point, as a landing page. So all of this data does relate to the time that we're looking at. So we can always change that that time or that date range, sorry. And we're familiar with how many sessions that have been occurred on that specific page, and users and new users. So there's some time. So that here's the time, average time spent on the page. And we'll come and talk about conversions and events in a moment. If you do track revenue, we can see how much revenue are coming through on those pages. So that's important data to understand. And if you can track bookings for your whatever your product or your service is, then that's valuable to see, well, what are the pages that I'm getting the best result from? And let's see why. Let's drill down a little bit deeper and see if we can repeat that throughout our sites. All right, so we're going to go to events. And so these are just some standard events that Google has deemed important for their own site. And so we can create our own custom events and to track what's important. So for instance, we've got a client, we set up 3 custom events to track interstate users, interstate and international users. So they can come straight to their events, they can click it, and then they can get an understanding of how many people they are getting to that. And just really quickly, there's an explore button, and there are some standard explorations that you can make and save. I will say, to control the data of here, you kind of have to spend a little time to understand the way that Google name their own fields and their IDs, but it's still worth having a look just to see if there's anything meaningful. So for instance, this path exploration follows the first point somebody enters your site, and it sees where they go next. So if you have a defined user pathway, that's a really useful report to use. And then as part of your setup, you would have asked to connect Google Ads if you are doing Google Ads. But thankfully, in GA4, we can report on any kind of campaigns that we're doing in a digital sense. And so whether that is a Facebook campaign, or we're doing a paid search campaign, as we can see here, you can get this data and drill down. So what we'll do is we'll just click on, we're going to view channels. So we're going to go a little bit deeper into this, and we're just going to show you a couple of other functions to manage your data. So what we can do is we can add a filter. So these, let's open this date range. So it's a broader time, just so we get a lot of nice data. No, there it is. And we're going to say what we want to see is just people from Australia. So what we can do here, we can come down to the geography. We can say Australia. Sorry, we can say country is what we're looking at, and then we can find Australia just to see how many users have been applied. All right, so the numbers have reduced significantly, and so this just relates to our Australian audience. Now, it does rely on having an understanding of what those dimensions are, but yeah, once you start to click into some of those elements, you'll start to become a little bit more familiar with those options. So we can turn that off, and we can get rid of that filter, and it will return that full data. So that's just an example of how you can get down a little bit more granular into your own website's data. So you might want to find out, in terms of a certain page, is it males or females? What ages are people? What's the source? Where are they coming to me from? So you can get all of that data in quite a granular way. All right, so I've probably gone along a little bit too much in that live demo. So I might throw to you, Chris, just to see if there's any questions.
Thank you, Rob. We haven't got any questions so far, but I do know that we had a couple beforehand. Would you like to address those ones, Rob, while I encourage our team to send us a couple of questions?
Yeah, so there were some questions around data and privacy, and that's both from you as owning a website, but also as a customer. So I'll emphasize again that the whole premise for why this has changed, or one of the main premises, is to protect people's privacy. So Google no longer relying on cookies to gather that data, and no personal information will be collected. And so it's a much cleaner experience and a safer experience for people. Sometime in the new year, I mentioned that Google is updating Chrome, and what they're going to be doing is they'll still collect some information, but it's only based on our interests. So it's not going to collect personal information. So if Google is capturing data on me, they would know that I love mountain biking, they know that I love food, and that they know that I like to walk. And so that's how advertisers and marketers can access the data that we've we previously used for retargeting customers. One of the other things I remember, one of the questions was about what does this mean for my tourism business? So for a lot of us, it's about getting bookings. And in most cases, we use a third party to do that. So whether that's little hotelier, if you're a tour and attraction and you are looking at being able to track dynamically, if somebody comes to your website, they go to your tours page, they select a tour and they go to book. So often that's either done by a widget on the page or we send them off to the third party website. So if you go to whatever third party you use, and I'll talk about two common ones, so Little Hotelier and Resdy, they do have a facility to set up some tracking. So typically what will happen is they'll say, well, what is the page that people are going to come to, let's say the Resdy booking page. So you can enter into the back end of your Resdy account what that page is. They will give you sometimes they'll give you a tracking code, and sometimes they might ask you for your GA code and they can link it that way. So then when you go into your Google Analytics 4, you'll be able to see that whole journey mapped out. So it might be that, I've had 100 visitors today, I've had 50 people go to my tours page, and I've had 2 people book tour 1. And the only way that you can really get that data is if it's being tracked, say in this instance in Resdy. So yeah, I'd encourage you to reach out to whoever the platform is that you use for your bookings. If it's a fully coded one, talk to your developer. That actually is probably an easier proposition than going to those third parties.
Rob, we have some questions coming in, which is very exciting. Well done, everybody. The coffee has kicked in. Mm-hmm. One from Brittany. If I do not have the red message, does that mean we have already moved to GA4? Are there any markers I can reference to be sure I am on GA4?
Sure. So when you go to your Universal Analytics property, if you go down the bottom left-hand corner and click on Admin, and then in the middle column, the first thing at the very top will be GA4 setup. You can click straight on that, or you can click the third one down, which I think is data streams, and it would say that you are connected already. That's the thing that will, and you'll see that there's a little button that says data is flowing.
Brilliant. Rob, one from Jen. She asked, can we go through setting up an event? Are you still able to access your demo account?
Sure. All right, let's.
That's the cleanest desktop I've ever seen, Rob, just saying.
You know what? I cleaned it up before I came online. All right, let's see. So yeah, to set up an event, I'm wondering whether Google is actually going to let me do it, but I'll show you where you can go. And so what I've done is I've clicked in the GA4 account right here. I've clicked on admin, and I'm going to go to events in this column here. So I know I'm in my the GA4 property because it's telling me, and there's not a third column. If you're in Universal Analytics, you'd see a third column there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to events. And here are the events that Google has set up. So you can see they've done things like, a new engaged visitor. So what that would mean is whatever date period, they would set up a trigger to say, show me new users, and they would define a time that they would, or some actions that they would predetermine as being engaged. Let's see if there's anything else that's made sense. So this is all page views. So this is one is for predicting top spenders. So this is where they would go into their, they would set a limit to say, show me people that have spent over $500 in it, like the last 30 days. All right. So what we're going to do is, we'll see if it lets us do it. You can modify events. So any of the existing events you can modify, or you can create an event. So we can see here that these are some of the events that have already been created, and I can see already that this demo account is not letting me, so it hasn't given me the permissions. But what we'll do is we'll see if we can click into one of these, and so then you can see what the steps are here. So the first step is to name what the custom event is. And what they're encouraging us to do is to not use spaces, but to use underscores. So we want to call our event something that is logical. The next stage will be, what is it that we're actually looking for? So there are predetermined values that Google have set for all of us. And so in this instance, Google has chosen the purchase, and they've added, so I know we can't really see how you set it up, but there'd be a and or an or button in here. And what they're saying is we want to find every purchase that is a greater value than $60. So you can determine what that value is in this particular instance. So yes, there's two parts to it. You set the name, that is something logical, with an underscore, no spaces. You then have to, you can keep the event name as that, it defaults to that. In here, the operator will be things like equals, greater than, contains. So we'll go back and we'll see if we can find another one that is going to make sense. Equals page view, page location. Yep. So this one is if somebody's registered for whatever this is. So the event name is equals. We want to track page views. That's the main thing that they're looking at. But then to drill it down to see whether that registration has been complete, the parameter is, and again, it is a case of becoming familiar what these parameters are. And these are all predetermined by Google. And what they're saying in this instance is, show all page views, but with the page location that equals this. And then you can save, then you just have to save it. But what I will do is next week for the Digital Ready program, we're recording how to set up these events. So I would imagine if it's not by late next week, maybe early the week after, we will have some things that you can follow through step by step. In the second last slide of this presentation, which I'm happy for you to forward around, Alex, is some links to Google's YouTube channel, which steps out these things as well.
Thank you, Rob. Now, Jen, you had a couple of follow-up questions. Do you want to unmute yourself and just ask them, or were they covered with Rob's?
Thanks, Alex. Rob, can we get a cheat sheet of those add payment, add to cart, begin checkout, those predetermined events that you have there, just so we can set them up ourselves, because Google doesn't do that for you, that we actually have to magically know how to describe these things in Google language.
Yeah. So what we can, I have, if I haven't included in the link already, I will add it to the footer. So we've got that link. So yeah, they do supply a list of those names and what they mean. It's still a bit hard to get your head around them. The other thing is, if you're competent with all of these kind of things, you can set up your own custom. They call them custom dimensions, but you do need to be able to go into the back end of your website and nominate. So a good example is if you wanted to track your newsletter signups, your form setups, you can grab the unique ID that's in the back end of your website and create a custom dimension, so then that you can trigger an event based on those. And I'll make a note to, I think I've seen a video that shows you how to do that as well. I'll link that in the footer as well.
I think just a screenshot of where you had that event open and those terms listed, because we have to input those ourselves, just to have that screen, that would
Sure.
be good, because I wouldn't know what events to set up necessarily, and then I wouldn't know what parameters to put in there to make that event happen. So
Sure.
it's easier if you have a bit of a
head start. And one of the
directory, if you like.
Yeah. And so the other thing that you can do is you can modify some of those existing events. And
there are no existing events.
Okay. So in earlier on, well, I'll see if I can do it here. No, I can't do it in their demo account. Yeah, I will show you. I'll send the instructions on how you add Google's custom events to your GA4 property.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Rob. One from Antonio. Can I ask how we can install your Google tag to business website?
Sure. So there's kind of 3 different ways, and it depends on your platform, unfortunately. But so typically there's a couple of different ways. So what you can do, if you're using a content management system, that's a fairly standard one. You can simply copy that measurement ID. And so in a platform that is, say, Squarespace, you just have to go to settings, to the developer mode, and then you choose Google, and you just have to paste it in. If you are using WordPress, so the stats would say 40% of us are using WordPress, there's Google have got a plugin that you can just add that to. And again, I'll make a note to add that to the notes. WP plugin. If you use Google Tag Manager, when you're setting up your stream, the Google's not going to let me do it. I'll just see if we can get there. I don't have all the full permissions, so so you can go to this configure tag settings, hopefully. I'm just waiting for this to open. So then there's these options down here. So a useful one is to manage automatic event detection. Actually, no, it's already done. So installation, we go to installation instructions. So you can copy this code and you can send it to your developer and they just paste it into the head section. Or if you click this tab, it gives you some instructions on how to do it based on the type of platform that you have. So this plugin here is the one that I recommend if you do use WordPress. And this shows you the instructions on how to do it with some of the more frequently used content management system. So again, I'll just quickly go back. So to install your tag, you want to go to your stream. So where we started was data streams. We clicked on the stream. I think Taylor Swift's slowing us down. It's all right. It's just being a little bit slow. So then we're going to go down to configure tag. And then there's the installation instructions. So you can copy the tag or you can go and work out. So yeah, if it hasn't been set up, you can put your own URL in here and you can scan your site. And then if Google recognizes it, it will tell you how to add the tag.
Thank you very much, Rob. Now I'm hoping, Bree, that answered your question. If you are using Google's website builder, do we need to put the Google tags in? Wouldn't Google do this automatically?
Yeah, look, I can't answer that one. I wouldn't ever assume anything. And as a precaution, I would go through those steps to be sure. Based on it being, if it's a Google website, I would imagine all you would have to do is to copy the measurement ID, and you'd hope. Now, that being said, I haven't looked at a Google website for a long time, and I was surprised at how inflexible from an SEO point of view. So I wouldn't make any assumptions that they do it automatically for you. But if they have done it automatically for you, when you go to your setup assistant here, you would see that the data is flowing, and you would know that it would be connected. So what I've done there is I've gone to the setup assistant in GA4 under the admin, and I can see that this is flowing. If you see data flowing, then it's all okay.
Right, thank you. One from Linda. Will that timing thing not be on when I click all the things I meant to do for the new GA4?
Hopefully.
Okay.
Yeah, in doing a bit of research, we haven't actually been able to establish whether they will turn that off. I'm assuming that there will be a new message if everything hasn't been set up properly. But the main thing is, if you are seeing that data flowing, then that's the main thing. Then what you want to do is then just go in and check off all of these things, and I'm pretty confident you should see that that bomb countdown evaporate. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Rob. Is GA4 only applicable if the user uses Chrome or all browsers? That's from Harlan.
Yeah, so it's applicable for all browsers. But I think, yeah, the interesting thing, and I don't know why it is the case, but yeah, Australians more so than any other country love Chrome more so than any other browser.
One from Terry. With the rise of VPN, is location or analytics accurate?
I'd have to do some research on that one. Great question. I would imagine not, but I'll do some research on that one.
But need to ask Google that one. One from Hamish. Can we access UA reports for a period of time after this change?
I would imagine that you can, but the big thing to remember is if you have set up your own goals and audiences, they will come across and will be available to you. So yeah, we can see here that there's 32 audiences that have come across in Google's own setup. And so that's all okay. Google have assured us that every piece of information that we were able to access previously will be available here in GA4. I haven't seen whether they are going to completely turn off UA. I would imagine that they won't, and that there'll be another period that they'll allow us to have access to it. But I haven't read that to be for sure.
Thank you very much. A couple of questions from Fiona. So now that GA is using events as a measure, will measuring your engagement be more about how many pages the user goes to, or if they meet the criteria of your predetermined events, rather than specific time on the website?
So yeah, you can determine what that looks like. So with events, you can determine what that looks like. You know, it might be, you could do it on a page count. It might be, you know, it might be time. It might be you know, how deep somebody goes into your page. One of the predetermined events is scroll time. So a scroll is determined if somebody gets 90% of the way down your page. So that is a custom event ticked there. There is another event about you know, whether somebody views your video. So there's lots of different metrics that you can apply to say what success is for you in your own custom event.
I have to say, Rob, I found that your point there about time on the website fascinating and absolutely right for a novice like me who's not deep into this. It's not about time anymore. It's about what you want your website to do and what it converts. Fiona had a sort of a second question to that about bounce rate. Will that still be a measure of success or failure in the mix of measures?
That's a really good question, because I haven't actually looked for bounce rate. Bounce rate was something that we used to focus a lot on, probably 18 months to 2 years ago, but not so much. I'm kind of personally hoping it's not there, but let's test it. Bounce rate.
Yeah, let's have a look.
So yeah, it still is a metric. I just haven't seen it front and center. But yeah, so if that is still available, you'll be able to use that as part of of success. So bounce rate, for those that aren't familiar, it is mostly about interaction rather than time. So if somebody lands on your homepage and scrolls down and dwells, but then clicks to another page, then that is success, and that won't count as a bounce. So bounce exists for particularly from an SEO point of view. If you search for the best accommodation in the Huon Valley, and you go to you click on the first search result, and you go there, and that's not what you want, you'll go back to your search result. So Google are trying to, in that instance, make sure that they're returning the best results for customers. So that's why bounce rate exists. But it is mostly based on an interaction with a web page. So one of the strategies you could think about is, on our home pages, yes, we've got to have a level of content for Google to understand what that is. But, if you've got a number of tours or attractions, or you've got different rooms in your accommodation, is just have a snapshot about those. So then if people want more, they can click to the deeper detail. So then that's saying to Google that person's engaged because they've entered another page.
Yeah, interesting. Look, that's we're over time. If you do need to go, please do so. So I apologise for that. As you can see, we are recording it, although I did miss the first few minutes. Well done, me. Only had one job, didn't I? But we got 90% of the session anyway. So we'll upload that, share it with everybody that's on here. We'll upload that to our channels as well, make it visible. And as Rob said, they are going to do some work with Digital Ready to make some videos accessible to answer some of these questions as well. So it falls to me to thank you very much, Rob, for your time today, and also for Digital Ready and Business Tasmania for supporting us with this session today. Rob, would you like to just remind everybody what they can access every year with Digital Ready?
Okay, so I'll just share this slide again. So yeah, I'll forward my presentation to you, Alex, and I'll add a couple of other links to this page where you'll be able to click through to some resources. But in terms of Digital Ready, yeah, I encourage you to go to this website here. There is some like a fundamentals tab where you can understand some of the things that are offered. There's also a really useful search function. So if you want more information on Facebook advertising or Meta advertising, Google ads, you can filter by podcasts, by blog posts, by videos. And yeah, as I say, in a couple of weeks' time, there'll be some content for us on GA4. The other thing is there is coaching. So if there's anything specific that you need, there's about 10 coaches around the state. Those sessions have almost booked out for the year. So if you can find a gap in somebody's diary, you can access some free coaching there as well. But yeah, the main thing would be to go to that website and delve into the resources that are there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rob. And we're going to announce now the most important thing that you've all been waiting for, which is the top virtual background. With, as we said, little or no governance at all, we have chosen Mark Hundlebury.
Woo woo. Thank you.
At the risk that isn't Tasmania and me shooting myself in the foot, what is that background?
Cradle Mountain.
Oh, phew. That's great. Brilliant. So, Mark, if you're up at whereabouts are you, Mark, in the state?
In just outside Hobart.
Yeah, great. Well, come in anytime. The bottle is here. We'll drink it together. No, just come in.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and thank you to you both for all of your time today. It's been really useful.
Absolute pleasure. Okay, so we'll follow up with everybody with the various presentations. Again, thank you, Rob, and the recording links, etc. Get in touch with us already if you've got any more questions. And thank you so much for your time, and have a wonderful weekend.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Right, Rob, I've got to go.
All right, man. We'll talk later.
Yeah, thanks so much for your time.
All right, no worries. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.